Deadline, Chapter 14. On Thanksgiving, Dad and Cody and I sit on the couch around the coffee table eating holiday nuts and watching the Dallas Cowboys get their heads handed to them. The bad news is the nuts are probably dinner. Mom's locked in her room and Dad has the cooking skill of a dirt clod. The good news is Christmas will be better. Her downtime seldom lasts a full month. Shortly after halftime, I answer the doorbell to find Coach on the porch. "Hey, Coach, what's up?" "What's up?" he says. "Dinner's up. Y'all invited me, right?" I'm thinking Dad or Cody screwed up in a big way, 'cause Coach isn't even tooting a bottle of wine around for him and Dad. He whacks the side of my head. "I'm just messing with you, Wolfman," and turns for his car. "Come on, give me a hand." I stare into the back of his SUV, which smells like a 4-star restaurant, like I'd know what a 4-star restaurant smells like. Coach has prepared an entire Thanksgiving dinner. Cranberry sauce, marshmallow-covered yams, and all. He must have turned into Emerald. "Let's get her in there while she's still hot," he says, and picks up the turkey roaster. Within minutes, we're sitting around the table like a regular family with two dads. Dad and Coach are cordial, but you sense them avoiding the gorilla in the kitchen and my mom's closed door. I think my dad is embarrassed for someone on the outside to see this part of our family secret. But he knows Coach has seen it before, and it's safe with him. I don't know that they've ever discussed it. Coach is respectful of Dad's embarrassment and also of Dad's inability to change it. The most intimate thing said during the entire time is, "How about them Cowboys?" Early December. So Thanksgiving is behind us, the football season has drawn to a merciful close, and we're all equal again, Lambeard says to start class. Mr. Lambeard believes athletes, particularly male athletes, and more particularly football players, get a free ride around here, which we do, but not for any fault of the coaches. Coach Bank has seniority, and most coaches follow his philosophy of jocks being simple guys who play games and who shouldn't get special privileges. It's just that when you're winning, Max Sebring and Luke Bryson, who run Trout's 2 restaurants, tend to give you 2 burgers for the price of 1, and Rich Graham, who runs Trout's Sports and Small Engine, is likely to give you a stunningly low price on t-shirts that sport his logo. Those guys are throwbacks, so female athletes aren't held to the same regard. That final game was a good one, guys. Very enjoyable, even though the result wasn't exactly what we had hoped for. It's hard to tell if he's totally serious or if sarcasm is creeping in, but it doesn't matter. The season is over and the hoopsters start tonight, and soon it will be all about putting the round ball through the round hole, which Cody and Dallas excel at, and I don't. They're both closer to the hole, so they will stay in the limelight, and I'll figure out what to do with the rest of the year or the rest of my life, whichever comes first. I've been freaked out since my conversation with Dallas the other night. I watched her from 2 rows over this morning, and she looks as normal as anything. She and the other lady hoopsters were in the cafeteria this morning talking up the season, and as I stood in the entrance watching it, almost seemed as if our conversation never happened. But it did, and I sat there and I lied to her. I tried to convince myself it wasn't a lie really, as in technically, but if you think about it, anytime you want someone to think something different than what is true, it's a lie. Little things keep popping up in my head like, does Joe Henry know? I've never heard him call her mama or mommy. In fact, he calls her Dallas Suzuki. Little screwball uses her whole name. And who played the mom role back when he was a baby? And she was 13. And what was it like to be dragged off by your mom to have a baby when your Uncle Roy was still on the loose? What did they tell the doctors? I know if a doctor hears that, he or she has to report it. Even if they went several states away, someone would have to show up and pluck Uncle Roy out of his house, and the truth would have leaked out. And God, she had to have it. 13. It's supposed to hurt like crazy when you have a baby. I didn't ask any of those questions Friday night. I just said I'd stay. Ben, Lambeard says, you with us? Right here, I said. Well, I'm right here now, but I just got here. What was the question? We talked last week about you changing your project. Have you rethought that, given the time you've had? Yes, I have rethought it, and no, I am not going to change it, I said. I'm bringing Malcolm X into current events. I'm starting a grassroots campaign to have this street here in Trout named after him. I hear that I have ticked my classmates, Sooner says low from the seat behind me. Shit, Wolf, what's the matter with you? We're not naming no street after as has been mentioned, Lambeard says, you live in a town of 0% African American inhabitants. Even if I were to change my mind and let you do it, where would you get your signatures? I'll start with anybody who is around for the 60s, I said. That's how a grassroots campaign takes root. Well, I'm not going to change my mind, so it's mute. It's mute except for, I'm going to do it anyways. Sylvia Longley of book-burning fame says, stand up for this, Mr. Lambeard. Someone in the school needs to have some sense. Lambeard looks pleased. I fully intend to stand up for it. Ben, do you realize that if you receive a failing grade on this project, you could receive a failing grade for this course, costing you your diploma? I'm realizing it just this minute, I said. And you are willing to do that? You have probably a 3.7 grade point average, looking at a bright future, and you'd sacrifice it all to make this point? Nah, I said, but really only be sacrificing 3 months. I could take the course in summer school down in Boise or somewhere and hit the ground running in the fall. Dallas says, this Wolf kid is smarter than he looks. Randy Dolvin says, he'd have to be. Dolvin's comment isn't mean-spirited. He disses everyone. Sooner, on the other hand, would move out of town before allowing a street to be named after a black guy. I think I'll campaign to make it his street. I have decided after reading Lies My Teachers Told Me that I love this title, by the way, that we're still inherently bigoted country. Our history books are whitewashed of our radical history, particularly recent radical history. Did you know that when the director of the FBI actually undertook a smear campaign on Martin Luther King Jr.? But I digress. This project is particularly current because Malcolm X learned to acceptance after going to Mecca, which, like I said before, is right in the middle of the nastiness today. It's like iconic or whatever. And there will be a lesson if I'm successful and a lesson if I'm not. We'll all learn something. We may have our racial problems, but the United States of America is the freest country in the world for every race. On what do you base your assumptions of racism? Living here, I said, watching old clips from Hurricane Katrina. hit and watching the Spike Lee HBO movies, did you know that they found dead bodies more than a year after Hurricane Katrina? No way that happened in, like, Beverly Hills, California. When the World Trade Center was bombed, they combed through the rubble. It's all we heard about. The president was at that site within days. We might not still have lynchings, but that doesn't mean that bigotry is gone. I've picked up Lowen's book since the last time you mentioned it, Lambeard says, and I hate to tell you that it's decidedly left-leaning. Perfect, I said. If I read it and our textbooks and listen to you, I should land exactly in the middle. And if only half of what is in there is true, we still have problems with race. Plus, Katrina was a while ago, Lambeard says, and there are other circumstances that went with that. I don't think you can call it racism or bigotry. Well then, I say, what do you call Sooner Cowan's walking out onto the coin toss at the Timberland game and saying how while raising his hand like some 2-bit movie star cowboy? Sooner is up like a flash. That there was a joke, you little punk, he said. I didn't know the brothers Injuan was gonna take offense. Did you keep the ball they gave you? I said, turning around. He's coming, but so is Cody. I'm safe. I turn back to Lambeard. I rest my case. Lambeard says, I don't think Mr. Cowan's meant to be racist. I'll admit, if that happened, it was a bit insensitive. That's how racism works, I said back. You should read Malcolm X. Sooner stopped in his tracks, as is my brother, standing fast, waiting for him to sit back down. That's how any bigotry works. Sooner says, you better watch your mouth, midget. Careful, Cowans, I said. You might piss off some midgets. You make a case, Mr. Wolf, even though it's a flawed one, Lambeard says. I guess I'm not willing to let you throw your diploma away on stubbornness, so I'll let you do the project, but I'll cut it in a heartbeat if I hear anything negative from the townspeople. Sooner, sit down. My brother hasn't said a word. He's leaning against Nessa Milner's desktop, just keeping the peace. Nessa Milner doesn't seem to mind. Dallas raises her hand. Mr. Lambeard, what would you say if I told you I thought I should never have to pay taxes to the United States government? I'd say you better plan to spend a good deal of your life behind bars, Miss Suzuki. Why do you ask? Did you know that during World War II, my grandparents were given 1 day to get everything that they could carry and then sent to a concentration camp in Arkansas? Those were relocation centers, Miss Suzuki, not concentration camps. I know what the government called them, Mr. Lambeard. She says his title with some pomposity. The same pomposity he uses for hers. And I learned right in this room that nuclear warheads are called peacemakers, and that the relaxation of pollution restriction is called the Clean Air Act. They were concentration camps. Whoa, Dallas is using her weapons she gathered right in this room to make a point. I think Mr. Lambeard's not going to like it. Maybe I would love her even if she were a man. And your point is that my father got cheated out of his substantial inheritance, which probably cost him a college education and a job that would have allowed him to at least pay his child support, which I might use to go to college. My grandparents or my father or my uncle never received a payment and if you're African American or Native American, well, where should I start? We don't even admit our historical racism. How would you expect us to recognize current racism? I think we could all learn a lot from the responses Ben gets doing this project. First, Ms. Suzuki